this beginning that you have made.
Tahl, a longtime journalist, is now one of the managers of Jewcy, a Jewish-oriented website. That's a good opportunity to find out about that odd mixture, a millennia-old culture and up-to-date technology.
The web empowers all of these individuals to receive an unlimited amount of information and to do all of those things they once relied on organizations for, to do it themselves, to form ad hoc independent minyanim wherever they are with people who are interested, to do online chavruta, to really bypass many of the organizational structures that were set up, at least within American Jewish community. And that on top of that phenomenon, you have an age where the question is no longer how to be Jewish, but why to be Jewish. And when people can circumvent these organizations, can have access to all of these other religions, it puts a lot of pressure on Judaism and the Jewish community to prove itself and its value.
At least for you, why be Jewish?
There's a theologian named Jacob Dusner, and he puts it well. He said the reason Judaism has lasted as long as it has is because it provided a conceptual technology to help people navigate the world that they lived in, not just in sort of vague terms, but how to interact with your neighbor, to interact with your wife, how to commemorate a wedding, a birth, a death. The key, I think, now is to have people be able to convey that in an exciting way, to translate it, and they haven't done such a good job of that.
Who hasn't done a good job? Name names.
The federation system, what you might call the establishment of the American Jewish community, was created sometime around that sort of turn of the 20th century to cater to 2.5 million or so Eastern European Jews, persecuted, similar values, and help them maintain their Jewishness and also assimilate into American society. And it served a very important purpose and did a very good job of it. Over time, what happened was that, those 2.5 million Jews grew up and spread, and their values became very much different.
Through the assimilation process?
Through the assimilation process. And this happens to every ethnic and religious group that comes to America. You just can't beat the American assimilationist machine. And so as time went by, that system stopped serving, I think, the needs of the community very well. It also became focused on all of these organizational issues, mainly getting money for itself. And it was run by, as these organizations tend to be, bureaucrats with self-preservationist instincts. And that had an effect, the sort of disintegration of the Jewish organizational system. One, it made the community itself a less compelling proposition. So what are best and brightest, they stopped going into to become Jewish professionals or rabbis. They became hedge fund managers and doctors and lawyers. And while acknowledging there's a crisis, and I can explain why I don't believe there's a crisis. There's a crisis for them. There's not a crisis for Judaism.
I'll ask you about that in a second.
Okay. They just, they don't, it's hard for them to change.
Basically, you're saying they got too much involved in the bureaucracy and they neglected what?
I think they became hyper-focused on, and this is where the crisis comes in, hyper-focused on several issues. There's constant talk about the intermarriage crisis, and there's talk about who is a Jew and how do we define a Jew, and there's talk about these unaffiliated Jews, and they don't care, and they're they're so much more concerned with people in Darfur than other Jews, and that doesn't go over well with young Jews trying to figure out whether they want to be part of this thing or not. There's a huge opportunity in the intermarriage trend. These are people who, if you show them how vital the community is and how great it is to raise kids Jewish, these people are going to raise their kids Jewish. Ultimately, that's all that matters, And if we can't convince them of that, frankly, I'm at a point, and I think a lot of other people are at a point, then we should stop worrying about Judaism surviving, because maybe it's not worthy of survival. Yeah, I don't think that's the case. The idea, I think, for moving forward is to get back to basics and get back to rabbis in communities that are helping people. And there are a bunch of different kind of values that I think need to be changed.
So what values would you like to see?
Well, I'll speak of one that I think Jews are great at. I mean, there's no one better. If Judaism is anything, it's always been countercultural. We want to fashion a utopia here, now, not in the afterlife. Do it here. This is what matters. And that's fantastic. So if we could, one thing we could focus on is reigniting that utopian imagination. You know, having Judaism facilitate these conversations about how we can do so much good on a from altitude at 30,000 feet in movements we might create or might support. Environmentalism is out there, and so on down to how you conduct yourself, what kind of neighborhood you want to live in, what kind of marriage you want to be in. That seems to me like a good first principle.
When I listen to you speak, there's something almost dissent-like in the way that you speak about, certainly about the old institutions. Do you feel you're in a struggle?
We have to walk a careful line in the sense that we should define ourselves in opposition to ideas and organizations, and not necessarily specific people and things like that, because really, ultimately, if we want to have a transformative impact on the community, we're going to have to work with these organizations. We're going to have to rebuild this infrastructure. It's just natural for young, idealistic people. You need a nemesis, you know? You need to fight for something.
Do you feel that you're gaining ground? Do you feel that you're winning?
No. I think Jewcy is just one dot on the map of what I actually think is a really interesting and promising kind of new Jewish renaissance. You see it in different pockets of sort of Jewish culture and Jewish religion, and rabbis in Los Angeles and Brooklyn taking risks, integrating their worship with nature, or all kinds of inventive things. There's a William Gibson quote that says, the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. Well, it's not distributed to most Jews right now.